breaking news from News Channel 3.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Beth Farnsworth.
And I'm CJ Ward. We are just moments away from the 4 o'clock news conference set up at San Marcos High School. Until then, we're going to take you outside and show you some live pictures. We believe this is up in the backcountry behind Fillmore, Santa Paula, closer to the CHP Wilderness. This area has been quite active. Hasn't progressed as far as the flank that's burning towards Santa Barbara and Carpinteria and Summerland and those areas, but this area is just burning. It flares up and then it gets quiet and then it flares up again, and right now you can see it's pretty active, and they've got some helicopters on it as well.
And we do know that the excuse me, the CHP, the Condor Wilderness there, Condor Sanctuary, so far flames have not reached it. There was a big concern that it was marching toward that sanctuary and others for the condors. Right now all seems to be okay, but of course they're vigilant, watching these flames as they flare up, as CJ said. We'll see that massive plume just building throughout the rest of the afternoon.
And in case you're wondering, I know there have been some fires since then, but one of the bigger fires in this area was the Piru fire. I believe that was back in 2003. Burned many of these areas, burned back into the backcountry. So we're talking, 14 years, 15-year growth. So that's pretty good. When they say the growth gets into the 20, the 25, they classify it as moderate to heavy. And so this is pretty good fuel, and you can see how hot it's burning, and it is throwing up one of those big plumes that we've been watching.
And when you talk about the fuel, that's what's happening right now in Romero Canyon. That area has not burned in roughly 30 years, I think, since the last big fire was there. So, of course, winds are always the concern. We're waiting for this 4 o'clock conference to begin in just a moment. But first, I want to check in with Alan Rose over in the First Alert Weather Center for an update on the winds. And still relatively calm, Alan.
Yeah, you exactly said that. 100% correct, Beth and CJ. This is the time of the day when we typically don't see a lot of wind in these areas. It can get breezy in some canyons, especially west of Carpinteria and Montecito. So the Santa Barbara Botanic Gardens, located in the Mission Canyon district of Santa Barbara, that's up in the foothills, has winds moving west to east, so it's paralleling the coast. And think about this, it's blowing from maybe the Goleta area out towards Carpinteria, so west to east is the direction of the wind. Humidity is still 9%. We haven't seen anything rise above 10 to 12% humidity-wise since back on Sunday, so it continues to be very dry in this stretch of Santa Barbara County. Carpinteria Hills actually a little bit onshore here, and typically that would pump in some higher moisture content from the Pacific Ocean. Not the case. This weather station now at 9%, so bone dry conditions. Earlier today for a stretch of about 5 hours, that was at 1%. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my 12 years here at KUIT. Carpinteria, calm winds here, humidity highest by the ocean, 43%, temperature at 68 degrees. Now back in the forecast tonight, not expecting any significant sundowners. I think the strongest or gustiest winds will only top out around 15 to 20, so it should not be in that category of maybe a wind-driven fire, more so challenges with the terrain and the dry brush and the very dry air mass in place. And typically speaking, the strongest wind picks up here in this type of pattern, I've noticed, between maybe 8 at night and about 3 in the morning. So we'll look for that window to see some of these higher gusts. Otherwise, it shouldn't be too terribly windy, at least for the next couple of hours. The red flag warning now continues all the way through 10 a.m. Friday. Was just talking with Dave Gomberg at the National Weather Service. Going to try to get him to do a phoner with us at 5 o'clock to give more insight into this. This is now the 8th day in a row with a red flag warning. I asked him, have you ever seen one in effect this long in your 20 plus years at the National Weather Service? His answer was no. So that gives you an idea that regardless of the season, we are talking about this high fire danger threat that continues. And even though it's not included in Santa Barbara County anymore, hasn't been since back on Sunday, I believe, there's still an elevated fire weather risk because of the dry air, just not the gustiest of winds in Santa Barbara versus maybe Ventura. By the coast in Ventura, we get about a 24-hour, 48-hour window of maybe some quieter winds and possibly some higher humidity values here, higher dew point temps. So they are no longer in the red flag warning, but a fire weather watch will return to this area, which means the fire weather risk goes up as we head towards Thursday morning and into Friday morning. I'll end really quickly with this Futurecast wind product. Again, this evening the wind speeds could be some strong to maybe gusty at times out there. You can see through the overnight hours, even into tomorrow morning, but really the gustiest out across Ventura County with that northeast flow. And then we repeat this pattern. So there's no big change to the weather conditions here. Maybe a little bit weaker for the south coast come Wednesday night, Thursday morning, but at the same time, Thursday morning, we'll see an increase in the Santa Anas out across Ventura County. Could even be strong enough again to see advisories issued to our south. Let's send it over to you. I'll talk more about air quality as well coming up at 5.
Okay. You know, we're hearing so many people talking about first, CJ, from the firefighters saying, I've been a firefighter for 20, 30, 40 years. I've never seen conditions like this. Weather forecasters saying the same thing. The humidity levels in the 1 digit, no rain in more than 200 days. I know one firefighter said, I think I inhaled more smoke in the 1 day fighting the blaze as it was approaching Carpinteria than he had in his whole 30-year career.
Yeah, we've said it since day one. This fire has broken all the rules. We think, okay, the wind isn't going to feed it, the wind's not going to push it, so it's not going to go any farther than here, and then it chews up 60,000 acres in a day, and it does it with no wind. It's burning through such heavy fuel, and it's since day one. Who would thought it'd be burning up an acre a second on the first night that it broke out near Santa Paula? You can see on the right-hand side of your screen there, we're getting close, hopefully, to our press conference at San Marcos High School. Some of the questions I'm sure a lot of people are going to have, and I'm sure fire officials are going to talk about, is what's going on right now in Romero Canyon. That's a big deal right now. We do have homes threatened there. We've been going back and forth with John Palmentieri. He's been giving us updates. Last time we checked in with him, they were doing helicopter drops. Probably, it looked like maybe 4 helicopters rotating in and out.
Yes. And we know yesterday at the same time, they were talking about Romero Canyon because yesterday the big firefight was in the Toro Canyon area in the Toro Saddle. And they said, we really want to fight it here, keep it from entering the Romero Saddle, because as John Palmentieri has shown us, you've got that huge drainage, that huge canyon, if you will, that's filled with old trees and lots of brush, and that will take you all the way down, the flames rather, all the way down to the 192, to Burnham Wood, to Sheffield, to these very populated areas of Montecito.
You know, the verbiage the firefighters like to use is the fire will establish itself. And that's what they don't want that fire to do. They don't want it to establish itself. In other words, once it's in there, it is really, really difficult to get it out, put it out, and more importantly, control what it does. The firefighters want to be able to have the upper hand on saying, okay, let's push the fire this way, let's direct it this way. And when the fire takes over, they've lost that control, and it changes the strategy. And so many factors can change that. The wind, and the fuels, and the attack, and so that's what we're looking at right here. You're looking at the live picture right here from our TV Hill Skycam.
And one thing that's really interesting is, like you're talking about, the attack component, because we have heard this is the top #1 priority fire in California right now. They are throwing every resource possible at it to get this thing to stop. And John Palmentieri, we were asking about the DC-10 and the flyovers. He said those are on order. They're on their way. So
well, they've been flying for days now.
And we know the smoke is thicker right now. So
yeah.
that it's not just that simple of an answer.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part of this too, because when the fire flares up, and when you need it most, when it's burning hot and heavy, and it's throwing up these 50-foot or 70-foot flames, and it's throwing up this huge column of smoke, and it's just raging underneath there. That's the one time you can't send it in the plane, or maybe can't send it in the plane because the pilot can't see, and it becomes a safety hazard.
And those drops cannot be made unless they have a visible look. They can visibly see the target that they're aiming for. But as you said earlier, the helicopter is really the workhorses. Looks like they're taking the podium right now, the lectern. Want to listen in on today's update.
Public Information Officer here on the Thomas Fire. Some of you guys have been here multiple days. Can I get a show of hands if you've... All right, you keep coming back. That's great. Looks like we're hopefully meeting that need. The intention of this meeting is to give you the information obviously related to the fire. That is our goal. We will continue to do this as the fire develops and progresses in your backyard. We do have simulcast Spanish translation. There are headsets in the back, and so we will continue to be providing that as well. And I'm going to pause for a minute to let our interpreter say what I just said.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Marla y junto a mi pareja Naira Pacheco estaremos ofreciéndoles interpretación simultánea esta noche. Estamos aquí para darles información sobre este continuo incendio, el incendio Thomas, y estas personas nos van a actualizar sobre cómo vamos y cómo vamos a combatirlo y cómo nos vamos a permanecer saludables durante la ocasión. Gracias. Si tienen problemas con su equipo, levanten la mano y nosotros le ayudaremos a cambiar de equipo.
Fantastic. Right now there's almost 7,000 firefighters in your neighborhood fighting this fire. You have the rare honor of having the largest fire department in the country working for you right now. It's truly impressive. These are the same firefighters that were called earlier this year when the Oroville Dam was under threat of collapsing. These are the same firefighters that were called when Mariposa County was burning. These are the same firefighters that were called when Santa Rosa was under the firestorm. And these are the very same firefighters that are here today. People often ask us, why do you guys sign up to do this? Why do you leave your families for months at a time to do this through some of the best times of the year to vacation and spend times with your family? I can't speak for the 7,000 other firefighters here, but I'd like to just tell you a little bit about why I'm here. It's all about a lady named Sue. And Sue's somebody I met at a public meeting just like this up in the city of Weed on a fire called the Bulls Fire. And the city of Weed had a wind-driven fire just like you guys are having, and she lost her home, her entire home. And one night after a community meeting, I noticed her walking to her car, and I could just tell she was having a bad day. We made a connection, and the next day I joined her at the rubble of what was left of her house to look for her dog. It's the only thing she had in the world. Her family had all moved away, but she had this beautiful little white dog. And we spent the next 2 days on our hands and knees, digging through the rubble, trying to find her dog. And we knew we weren't going to find a living animal. But for Sue, she just needed to find something to give her some closure about something that was her very best friend left in the world. And in the moment while I was down there digging and making this connection with Sue, it occurred to me that this is what I signed up for. More than holding a hose in my hand, more than going onto somebody's roof, more than a lot of the things we do, it's to make that connection with people and help them at their most vulnerable point. When we get to do that, it feels like we're fulfilling that obligation, that oath that we took when we got our badge. That's what keeps us coming back, and we find that the people that are the most gracious people in the world are often those that are under the worst trauma and have lost the most. And you people are continuing to just hit that home with all of our firefighters. Some of the most gracious people in the world live right here in Santa Barbara County. We're going to continue with our update, and I'm going to invite Santa Barbara County Fire Chief Eric Peterson.
Well, good evening, everybody, again, and welcome. I'm going to talk very slow tonight because I've been told we have an interpreter in the back and she needs us all to speak slowly. I want to thank all of the community leaders and elected officials from various areas and places that are here with us tonight. It means a lot to us that you're here. It means a lot to the community that you're here, so thank you all for being here. We're now a week into this fire. And obviously everybody's tired of the ash, everybody's tired of the smoke. Those who have been evacuated are tired of being evacuated. And I just want you to know, to tie on to what the previous speaker was saying, how gratifying it is to live in a community like this, where incidents like this continue to bring out the best in us. This community comes together. It knows how to act and how to respond and when these big incidents happen. And I can't tell you how proud I am of this community and the way it's behaved so far in this continuing fire. So thank you, all of you. So where we are right now, weather. Tonight we're going to see very much the same sort of fire activity that we saw last night. I know many of you were watching on the news or who were over on the east side. We're seeing some very active fire up on Toro Canyon area, and we're going to continue to see that. The humidity is really low. It's historically low. 2% are numbers that we just don't typically see. 1% humidity last night in Montecito. So we have just unprecedented weather conditions right now. Some good news, the camp is splitting. So we're going to have a support camp up at Lake Cachuma that can support the heavy equipment and personnel that primarily is working on this western end of the fire. So that's going to reduce turnaround times. It's going to reduce briefing times and feeding times and lunching times and all those things. Supply, logistical support. That's a good thing. The downside is that you're probably going to see a lot more traffic on Highway 154. So just be aware that you're going to see a lot of heavy equipment coming up and down the pass. You're also going to see a portable retardant tank and a heavy Type 1 helicopter operation at the bridge to nowhere at the bottom of 154. That is going to be supplying some Type 1 helicopters that are going to be, that's going to reduce the turnaround time for them to resupply and drop on the western edge of the fire. Right now, the Thomas Fire is almost the same size as the Zaca Fire, which reached 240,000 acres. I think it's interesting to note that it took 8 weeks for the Zaca Fire to reach that, and it's now taken a week for the Thomas Fire to get there. All of us have been spending quite a bit of time driving back and forth to the camp in Ventura County, and it's amazing to get in your car and drive 60, 70 miles an hour for 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and still not see the end of this fire. It's an unprecedented size of a fire that we're dealing with right here. And we appreciate your patience. We so appreciate your support. And now what I'd like to do is introduce Jeff Pemberton, Chief Jeff Pemberton, Unified Incident Commander in Unified Command. Thank you very much.
Good evening again. My name is Jeff Pemberton. I'm one of the Unified Incident Commanders serving on CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 4. The acreage that we published today was 234,200 acres. I know today that we did not get any significant runs. I would expect those numbers. We're currently bringing those in from the field, so I don't expect them to go up substantially, maybe a couple thousand acres, which is really good news for us and for you in the community. We still continue to maintain a 20% containment on the fire and still have just under 100,000 people evacuated, that we are doing everything we can to make sure those communities are safe to get them back home. Yesterday I promised that I would come back with some numbers of damage for the communities inside Santa Barbara County. I just got off the phone as I walked up on the platform with our lead that leads our damage assessment team. They're currently crunching those numbers. It looks like preliminarily they're a little lower than what we expected, but I want to wait until they get a chance to verify all that information before we make those public. But I did make that promise to you yesterday, and I wanted to make sure that I brought that back today. Yesterday we used 204 million gallons of water that we dropped from our helicopters and 1.2 million gallons of retardant. And from those helicopters, that water comes from a total of 28 helicopters that we've been flying on this incident, on top of the 6 fixed-wing aircraft and the 2 very large air tankers that we have also on the incident. That's a tremendous amount of air assets, including the folks that are on the ground. And just like our PIO said, we've got 7,000 people that we've brought into your community to bolster your local fire department. And representative on the map or on the overhead earlier was all those that are in unified command, and I wish we could get a picture of every one of those agencies that are providing assistance to not only the agencies that are directly involved, but to your community, because it would fill that screen and flow over the edges. But thank you for your time. We will continue day in, day out to fight the fight and make sure that we get the information accurate to you as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rocky O'Player, and I'm also one of the incident commanders of the Combined Unified Command Structure, and I'm part of the California National Team 4 in conjunction with the CAL FIRE Team 4 working together on the management side. Before I go into the overall picture of the fire, I really want to take a time to special thanks to the citizens of Santa Barbara County and those folks that are evacuated, the folks that listen to those typical decisions we have to make when we ask you to evacuate, both in Carpinteria, Montecito, and also a special thanks to our law enforcement component. We don't often give them the credit for the job that they have to do, that difficult job of not only the notification, but that job of actually evacuating folks and then maintaining those closures and the security and safety behind when our emergency workers go in and do the job. And we can tell you that it really, for the firefighters that are out there working, not having those folks there so they can do their job is tremendous for us to be able to do the job we need to do. And that is very difficult, I know, when you're asked to evacuate. The overall big picture, our number one priority is always going to be life safety. And so your safety and those folks that are evacuating, but we also have to remember the safety of our firefighters. When you take a look at this country, incredibly difficult country, and you go, well, why aren't they putting those flames out? Why aren't those hillsides? This is some of the most dangerous country anywhere in the world to fight fires. And we're not just going to put those firefighters in those exposures. And so when you see those flames tonight as they're backing down the hill, it's actually doing a good thing for us because we don't have the wind, we can't get in there, and we need that fire to burn down to the containment lines that we've already initiated. And so that's our goal. It's actually doing what we want. We continue to battle the weather, as you heard from the chief, that we have record-setting low humidities. We have unprecedented winds this time of year. And then you have just phenomenal drought conditions with the fuel conditions that we face. So as we focus as that priority of life safety, we also have those priorities to the community of Santa Barbara and the water. And so when we talk about, I think Chief Fontillo talked about the watershed, when we get into the national forest, we just can't allow that to burn. We have to go in and minimize that impact, because if we lose all that vegetation, and then when you do get rain, it creates an incredible amount of sediment, and that's your water supply for the communities. So while we continue the effort that you see, certainly our number one priority of life safety and properties, we have a large contingent that's also working in the backcountry and strategies, long-term strategies to utilize both previous fires. We've seen from the Zaca fire in 2007 that our fire that's burned into that has slowed down, because that's only a 10-year-old fire, so we don't have the type of vegetation that we've seen it burn through that had no history, I think back to 1932. And so those are some of the strategies as we look at the overall plan of how we're going to deal with this fire. And then we also have to remember the component on the Ventura side. Just a tragic loss to the number of structures and that we lost in Ventura City, Ventura County, and we still have fire that threatens the CHP wilderness. So we continue those efforts on the west end, or the east end, as well as the west end of the fire. And then finally, on behalf of both combined teams and the unified structure, just a reminder of the young men and women that during this holiday season are away from their families. While we do the command structure and we do the planning and we do the implementation and make some difficult decisions, it's those young men and women that are out there every day, 24 hours a day, trying to execute a plan to get our containment objectives and also to get our folks back into their community. So on behalf of both teams, thank you very much.
Good evening. Chris Childers with Santa Barbara County Fire Department, the battalion chief. As most of you know, I've met you before. Let me start with a real brief apology. Apparently my wife scolded me last night that I said I was playing on this in previous fires. I mean, I love my job, but that's sort of our sick sense of humor. We all deal with stress in our own ways. In police and fire departments, we often use humor to deal with our stress. And some of you may have noticed I've had a little stress the last few days. And I know you've had a little stress too. That's why you're here. So I will try to keep the humor to a minimum and tell you what we got going on. I think it's important to start with, I told you last night we were trying to force our efforts right in this area and hold the fire at above Toro Canyon Road. They said we've only gained a few thousand acres, but you see what that few thousand acres was. That was where we didn't want it. Now, why this is happening, and someone asked me, why can't we just go up there and put it out? My chief told you today, we had 1% relative humidity at Montecito Peak this morning. Relative humidity is the amount of moisture in the air. If there's moisture in the air, about a typical day in Santa Barbara is somewhere in the 50% range, so it's a little bit of moisture compared to the 100% it can contain. 100% rain is dripping wet. That's when the fog is so thick it's wetting your windshield. So 50% is wet, 25% is when fire behavior starts to get very active, and we get nervous as firefighters, and that's usually all summer long in Santa Barbara, especially in the backcountry. 1% relative humidity means there's absolutely no moisture in the air. The fuels, all the grasses, all of the dead fuels are drying out extremely dry, and they burn extremely hot. We have this fire that's burned through this much distance in a week instead of what Zaka did in 8 weeks, because it is really flammable, because it is so dry. So anything pushes it. We get that Sundowner or that Santa Ana winds from Ventura slammed there through that fire, and it threw it really fast. It came over here, that east wind pushed it 6 miles. I didn't think it could do that 3 nights ago now. And you see it's continuing to beat us up there right now. So guys are up there, folks are up there trying their best to do a great job, and they're really working their tails off, and you see it's still beating up on us. So we're still working on it. We still have our plan I talked about last night. Is there any chance we could have that other map? Yesterday's fire history map? The fire history map that that guy was showing me? Okay, we'll get that tomorrow night. If anybody wants to look at the fire history map and the details of where we're working, I have my trusty. Well, that's closer, but I have my fire history map. Come up and see me afterwards, and I'll show you what we're doing in more detail. But this will help me tell you where we're going. We have these divisions along here that are getting ready and do structure protection, or basically point protection when the fire comes down the hill. You see how far the fire has moved past our first attempt. This attempt is being threatened right now. And so we're probably going to bring the fire on over to Gibraltar Road if we can hold Gibraltar Road. And that's on the edge of the Jesucita and the T fire. We're currently constructing some pieces of line between the structures where possible, where we connect the dots. And we're cutting off, we're actually using the fire line from the T fire, the upper edge of the T fire, opening that, and then we're cutting up out of the Jesucita fire to try and stop fire there. It's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be easy, and we have predictions of bad weather by Friday, so it might be a real battle, but I don't want to be too negative. We're hoping and we're working really hard. Okay? And I'll be around here afterwards for any questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Faye Ram. I'm a Deputy Public Works Director for the Santa Barbara County Public Works Department, and in that capacity I oversee our water agency and our flood control district, a topic that is soon going to be in the news as we get into the winter. As we watch the fire progression, we are following along with plans to immediately start to address the flood control need that will be an issue for us this winter. Significant portion of our watersheds now have been burned from Carpinteria now into the Montecito area. The good news is we have multiple debris basins that traverse that portion of the county. Those basins were put in from past fires, the Coyote Fire, the Romero Fire, and then a federal flood control project in Carpinteria. So we have facilities in place, but we need to do some work to get them ready. We'll also be evaluating stream capacities downstream and be looking at what additional work we can do to be ready. And it is the 14th of December, so we don't have a lot of time to do this. The first fire I worked on was the Painted Cave fire in flood control. That was in June. We had almost 6 months to get ready. Now I feel like we have 6 days to get ready. I want to alert everybody to some resources that are available both in hard copy and our website. This is called the Flood Prevention and Response, Homeowner's Guide to Flood Prevention and Response. This is available on our website. If you go to the County Public Works website, there's a whole host of resources there. You need to be thinking about where you live in proximity to these burn drainages and whether or not you are at risk. And if you are at risk, you need to evaluate whether you think you need flood insurance. And as I mentioned the other night, there is a 30-day grace period from the time you buy flood insurance till the time it becomes effective. So if you bought flood insurance today, you would not be eligible to make a claim until January 14th. So it's very important that you analyze that closely for your given situation. I'll be here afterwards as well for questions. I have a handful of these guides. They are available on our website, and we can address your questions at the end. Thank you. The website is countyofsb.org/PWD. countyofsb.org. You can Google Santa Barbara County Public Works, and you'll get to it there as well.
Good evening again. Poncho Smith, District Ranger for the Santa Barbara and Ojai Districts of the National Forest. To follow up on what we just talked about, we have in place what we call a READ team, a Resource Advisory Team. They advise the firefighters about the things, as was mentioned last night, the Condor Sanctuary, wilderness issues, those kind of things that will affect the environment. We also have started a BEAR team, a Burned Area Emergency Response Team. And one of the things that they address, similar to the Sherpa fire and the Whittier fire, is what's going to happen when it rains. And if you remember the incident we had in El Capitan Canyon after the Sherpa fire, we had actually, I can't say we predicted it, but we had told the county, if you have X amount of rain in X amount of time, you're going to have a problem in that canyon. And so it's not that we can prevent it, because the country is just too steep and there's not enough vegetation on there to hold anything back. We can't prevent it, but we can predict it, and we can get people, as the IC said and Rocky said, our number one goal is life and safety, and we want to prevent the loss of any life or any injury to anybody. So just so you know and this team is working in conjunction with CAL FIRE. They're working in conjunction with the cities and the counties and the state to evaluate the damage that is being done on the landscape and to try to mitigate that as best we can. And if we can't mitigate it, to at least have a warning system in place working through the county EOCs that will advise the citizens if there is some sort of something bad coming their way. All right? Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Kimberly Coley, Executive Director for your local Red Cross here in Santa Barbara, as well as down in Ventura and in San Luis Obispo counties. I wanted to provide an update on our shelter locations. We are still providing overnight sheltering for over 300 community members. We have 3 shelter locations that are still actively in operation. We have one right here in Santa Barbara out on UCSB's campus in the Recreation Center. We had 67 people stay there last night. We also still have our Oxnard College location, where we've been averaging about 30 shelter clients every evening. And then our last and largest location has been at the Ventura County Fairgrounds, where last evening we had 191 shelter clients. In addition to the folks who are actually spending the night in our shelters, we also have hundreds of folks, community members, who are registered through the Red Cross shelter to come in and provide a variety of services, from 3 hot meals a day, snacks, water, briefings from our friends at Fire, and then also a variety of health services. We wanted to, last night I was here and there was a question about transportation. If anyone needs transportation to a shelter, you can simply call 211 and they will directly connect you to Easy Lift here in town. They're providing free shelter shuttles. So please, if you do need transportation, use that as a resource. In addition, we wanted to just thank everyone, of course, for all of the community support. We do not do this work alone, and so just want to thank all of our generous volunteers and donors and local restaurants and businesses and just everyone who's been offering support. So thank you so much, and we'll continue to be there for our community as long as we're needed.
Hi again. I'm Dr. Charity Dean. I'm the Public Health Officer for Santa Barbara County, and I have a few updates for you. By the end of today, we will have distributed over 300,095 masks within Santa Barbara County, and I want to thank and acknowledge Direct Relief for their quick partnership and generosity. They answered the call very quickly, and they also help us store our supplies. I've received a number of questions if a P100 is equivalent to an N95, and the answer is yes. A P100 mask will serve the same purpose as an N95 mask. We also want to let everyone know that the press releases on the website are all translated into Spanish. So when you go onto the website, if you can look at the press releases in English or click on a button and see them in Spanish as well. Also questions about the visible smoke and ash, and I'd like to highlight the point that what you see in the air, the visible smoke and ash, is different than the invisible particles. It's the invisible particles, the really tiny particles, that have the effect on your lungs and on your health. So you might be in an area like Santa Maria that has a good AQI, or air quality index, but you still see smoke and ash. That means that the tiny particles that damage your lungs are very low level in the air. It is important to note during cleanup that large amounts of wet ash, if they get on your skin, can have a health effect. So you want to avoid that. But when you see the smoke and the ash in the air, remember to check the air quality index if you're wondering if breathing in this air could be harmful to your lungs. We've also received a number of questions about HEPA filters. HEPA filters are high efficiency particulate air filters. They filter out 99.97% of these very small particles down to a size of 0.3 microns. You can create a clean room in your house by identifying a room with the right square footage. When you purchase a HEPA filter, look on the box and it will say the square footage that it will work for. So figure out which room that applies to, ideally a room with less windows. Make sure those windows are airtight and place the HEPA filter in that room. And make sure to keep the door closed so that that room stays clean. By establishing a clean room within your house, you can give your lungs a break. A great idea is to make it your bedroom so that when you sleep at night, you're breathing in clean air. Regarding cleaning up ash, we still advise that folks wait if they can to clean up ash since it is still falling. Please do not use leaf blowers, as this blows the ash right into the air. And those large visible chunks of ash, they do break down into the tiny invisible particles. Questions about vacuum cleaners have come in. So your typical home use vacuum cleaner, or even a shop vacuum, like an industrial type vacuum cleaner, does not filter out small particles. It essentially blows them back out into the air through the exhaust. There are vacuum cleaners that do have a HEPA filter so that they don't refilter those particles. Instead, they trap and contain those particles, and that would be ideal for cleaning up ash since it doesn't recirculate unhealthy particles. I will be here afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Ponce, a captain with the California Highway Patrol here in Santa Barbara. I want to thank the fine men and women of the California Highway Patrol who have been working tirelessly to protect the public during this fire. We continue to ask that the public stay out of the evacuation areas and to follow all of the instructions provided by fire personnel, law enforcement personnel, and Caltrans personnel that are stationed at closures. We still currently have 20 closures along the 192, and we would like you to rest assured that we are working diligently with our partners from the Sheriff's Department, patrolling the evacuated areas to keep your home safe. And we just are so thankful for the support that the community has shown to law enforcement and fire personnel during this incident. You guys have been amazing. So thank you so much for your support.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernard Maliki, and I'm the Undersheriff for Santa Barbara County, and I have the privilege to represent the men and women of the Sheriff's Office who are involved in both the evacuation efforts as well as the security efforts involved with this incident. The evacuation zones are unchanged from last night. The mandatory evacuation areas remain in effect essentially north of the 192 from Mission Canyon to the county line, and the voluntary evacuation areas are below that. There are currently 7,200 residents who have been evacuated and 34,000 who live in the warning areas. It's just a reminder that if you are in the warning area, that means that you need to be prepared to go at a minute's notice. This fire condition can change very rapidly, and you may not have a great deal of time from the time that calls. I want to just take 30 seconds to explain the process in terms of law enforcement and how that operates. When the incident command makes a decision that an area is to be evacuated, there are a number of people from the Sheriff's Office and Sheriff's Search and Rescue and the California Highway Patrol who go into the pre-designated zones. They have a listing of every home and business that is in that area, and they attempt to make direct contact in those areas to alert people that it's time to leave. The mandatory evacuation zone, you can choose to stay, and people have, but if you stay there, you do so at your own risk, and you run the risk of interfering with law enforcement and fire operations. So we strongly, strongly encourage people to leave when they're asked to do so. If you're uncertain of what area that you live in, whether you're in a warning area or an evacuation area, you can go to the County of Santa Barbara website that was referred to earlier, and you will see a link that will take you to the interactive evacuation map, and you can type in your address and find out which zone you actually live in. Once an area is evacuated, the Sheriff's Office and California Highway Patrol have 24 hours patrol in those neighborhoods. We have had a few reports of looting, not many, and we have made one arrest. In addition, the sheriff and the district attorney wanted to remind people that there are two sections of the law that are particularly applicable. One deals with price gouging and the fact that no business, once an emergency is declared, can raise prices more than 10%. And secondly is the area of fraudulent contractors, people who may come into an area that's in the warning area, or when we get into repopulation efforts, may come to you and talk to you about offering to make repairs. If you have any concerns about that, please contact the Sheriff's Office or the District Attorney. I want you to know that we have upstaffed all of our South County stations, and we are responding to routine calls for service. So if you are in a warning area and some of your neighbors have self-evacuated, please do not hesitate to call us if you observe any suspicious activity, as we do have units available to respond. Should the situation change in the days ahead, The Sheriff's Office has a standby system that's in place, and a number of people from both the Sheriff's Office, Search and Rescue, as well as mutual aid, if required, are available to respond. Lastly, I'd like to remind you, it emerged last night as an incident. During the night, fire often looks much closer than it is, and we received a number of calls from worried residents. Please know that there are, I don't want to give you a count because I don't know how many zeros are in a lot, but there are a lot of firefighters and fire engine resources and strike teams along the edge of this fire standing by to protect you and your property, and you will be notified if the situation changes. Again, on behalf of the men and women of the Sheriff's Office, thank you for your support, and thank you for letting us be of service.
All right, that brings us to our question answer portion of the evening. I'm going to invite our speakers to just come up onto the stage and stand here to the left of the podium. And if we've answered all your questions and it's time to go, we just ask that you file out of here in an orderly fashion. I think the flavor of the day for the question answer is going to be a little different. I'm going to give each section an opportunity, but you only get 3 questions per section. And if you guys behave, I might grant you a little extra, but we'll see how this goes. So, if you're in this section here and you have a question, I'd like you to raise your hand. I'm going to give you a number. Okay, sir, you're going to be number 1. You can put your hand down. Ma'am, in the yes, you're going to be number 2. And sir, right here, you'll be number 3. Okay? So who's number 1? All right, go ahead and stand, sir. We'll get you the microphone, and if you could ask your question, that'd be great.
Thank you. I just had a question on the strategy on the existing fire, and is it a break at Gibraltar, and is that where we're hoping to stop it at Gibraltar? And I understand that there's divisions protecting Montecito, but is that the end? And then I heard mention of a Windy Gap break. Is that still being cut?
Yes, and yes. So
okay.
Well, let me explain. The question is, where are we trying to stop this fire? Remember, I talked about last night, and I'll go back quickly. We have fire history of the Jesucita fire here. We have the Ray fire back here, and above that, the Zaca fire. So in the last decade, we've burned major portions of Santa Barbara County. What we're trying to do now is connect the dots and get them to there. I just entered you've heard of the cloud? I think I'm in it. Sorry.
No pressure.
Yeah, that's me, right? Okay, again, humor because we're stressed. All right, sorry. Okay, there we go. That's awesome. Okay, here we go. This really tells us a lot about what we're trying to do. You can see here, this is Jesucita. Right here is the T fire. Is everybody clear on that? So that's 10 years old. This is 9 years old. Here's the 2-year-old Ray fire. This is the 3-year-old, 4-year-old. White fire is just a couple of years older. And then this huge thing here is the Zaca fire. See that? We're threatening to get as big as the Zaca fire. That's why we're in trouble. Okay, so we have not stopped it here yet. We need to get from the houses to the Camino Cielo. And to do that, now we're looking at, if we aren't able to stop it and go direct, we're going to get up here and we're prepping the edge of the Jesucita and T fires with lines that will be basically following that perimeter, and then when if it slopped over our fire lines, it would be going into younger fuels than the old fuels it's in right now. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're still stopping it behind the houses, and that means that we have a lot more work to do there, and it's going to take us a little while to get there, because every piece and every chance we get, there's a chance of houses being at risk. So we're working really hard, and a lot of people are doing a lot of work right now. Then we get it to Camino Cielo. Now we have to get to San Ynez River, and then we have to get to one of these burns. That's our plan. So we have previous fuel breaks that go to the St. Ynez River. There's one over in Alder Creek that we've already lost. Another one we're coming down somewhere in here. We have Arroyo Burro Road, which has a fuel break. We have the Snyder Trail, which could be a fuel break. We have the, starts with an F. We have another one over there. Fremont fuel break, that's it, thanks. So we have ways to get to the San Ynez River. If we don't get to here at the Fremont or the Arroyo Burro fuel break, then those are going to be tying directly into the Ray Fire. But that burns more watershed. That's why we're trying to get closer over here. Another part of our problem, you've noticed this smoke in the air. When there's too much smoke, we can't use aircraft. And yesterday we had a great day of using aircraft. Today we've had all of the front country has been smoked in all day. This morning we got a few drops of air tankers in the back country down towards the San Ynez River. We did not get that opportunity in the afternoon, and so much less aircraft has been able to work. Okay, again, I'll be here for questions afterwards.
Okay, question number 2, yeah.
I just wondered, for those of us, if you get close enough to our homes and are protecting them, for those of us who have pools, can you access our pool water to protect our house?
So we've had crews do while the fire's not in your community, but it may be under an evacuation warning or an order. We have gone through and inventoried all of those homes, and you may see a little placard. We call it a WUI placard. On that placard tells firefighters on their access point to your property, even if it has a long driveway, whether there's a pool, whether there's propane, whether there's folks that have not evacuated even though it's under an evac order, which we would encourage you to evacuate, but it gives us a quick little summary of what's on that property. So yes, if we could reach it and we needed it, we would use it. Yes, I would say leave it open, or at least a portion of it open.
Yeah. Fire engines are big.
All right, fantastic. And question number 3. Who had number 3 right here? Josh, right up front.
Raise your hand, please.
2. While we're waiting, can we give a round of applause to our sign language interpreter? Yeah.
We live at the junction of Lilac and Romero Canyon Road, and there was fire up above the Jackson Ranch last night. And I was wondering what was happening in that very specific area, which seems to be the front portion of the movement west.
Yes, the fire, that portion is right here. This is the part that moved to the west last night. What we had last night was winds and weather that we're going to have similar to tonight, which means that even though we say there's no sundowner winds predicted, we still have normal flowing wind. So the normal pattern of the wind is it's going to blow onshore during the day because the land gets hotter, air rises, the air over the ocean is cooler, so it comes onshore. Makes sense. At night, when the land cools down, it becomes cooler than the ocean, so the ocean air burns down and then offshore. Does that make sense? So now we get that offshore flow at night. And last night, we had a good offshore flow because it got really cold last night, even though because it's December. So the land got cold. Slow down. Yes, ma'am. Our Spanish interpreter is doing an awesome job, and I talk too fast. And too many big words. Okay, so does this make sense? The ocean is much warmer than the cold land at night, so we had a pretty strong wind in the middle of the night blowing offshore, even though it wasn't a typical sundowner condition. And that caused a lot more activity at night, and you can expect the same. Fire will pick up tonight because of how dry it is and how well it's burning when that wind blows it. And then it will be burning again tonight. And does that answer the question? So that's what's spreading. And you wanted to know the location. I'm sorry. It's right there, like you saw. It came closer to you, closer above, and now it is in Romero Saddle and burning through it. We'll be through it tonight.
All right, fantastic. We're going to move to this section here, right in front. Okay, 3 questions. 1, ma'am, right there. Yep, you're 1. Sir, you're 2 in the white shirt. And ma'am in the red sweater, you'll be 3, okay? All right, question number 1. Uh-oh.
I know. Okay, we're going to switch back to that map, but let me explain while he's getting there. The purple lines are helping our folks on the ground interpret where the divisions are, where their responsibilities are on the ground. Because on a typical fire, we draw a map and we say, here's the fire's edge, go put it out. This map, a lot of these divisions are ahead of the fire, and the fire's up on the hill, and they have to know what their responsibility is, all those homes in that chunk. So we've got each division identified. That overhead and those firefighters are going to be responsible for all of the homes in that section. So you can see each of those sections, see these blocks, have a name and a supervisor in charge of all of the engine companies in that section. Then those little black lines, there's another map, or can you focus in a little on that maybe? The operational map that you started with? No? Okay. There we go. That'll help. Okay, see right here, when we put dots on them, firefighter humor, see, I tell you. Okay. So here, these, when they have dots in it, that means it's a proposed line we want to look at. If it has X's and dots like that, it's a proposed bulldozer line. If it has the letter H with dots, it's a proposed hand line, which means people will actually cut it with chainsaws and hand tools. Too fast, I'm sure. So those lines, these lines, okay. Earlier there was a question, are we still putting in the windy gap fuel break? You see all of these X's? This is a dozer line that is getting completed as we speak. This part's already done, and down here it's broken still, getting completed. That is still going in just in case we can't stop it on the 10-year-old fuels. And over here there was a couple of lines, right, and here we've already lost a dozer line that we had started to put in. And we have this proposed, but we're about to lose that too. It's not going to be able to be completed. I can't hear you either. Tell microphone.
Chains of black dots.
Above the red.
Here?
No, on the upper half. Yeah.
Again, these. Did I do that?
No. Oh yeah, you pushed wrong button. I get to blame that one on you. There it is.
I'll wait. Okay, so these are more proposed lines. And we are actually out there, we have people out there constructing them. You see, through even into the Zancaburn and Case, because this year fire behavior has been so incredibly severe, 10-year-old fuels will probably carry fire. We have to be prepared in case they take off, and we can't stop it on the edges where we're trying to right now. So we're still putting in secondaries. So those, when they're opened and dots in them, those are proposed. When we complete them, we put X's or H's for hand line. Okay?
Yep. How long after the ash stops or the fire stops will be wearing our masks? There's an awful lot of dust out there.
I guess the doc I should let do that, but basically let me tell you that we're going to mop it up as quickly as we can. And as hot as it's burned this year, there's not going to be a lot of resident time for it to burn after we stop it. So logs are burning up quickly and fuel beds are burning up completely. So there will not be a lot of duration after the final perimeter is made. It won't last long. And then you can talk about.
Sure. That'll be based on the air quality index. So, and of course the winds and the weather. But if the air quality index is good, if the rating is good for 24 hours or so, then I think it's reasonable. I mean, people don't need to wear masks in that situation because the AQI is good. However, I want to emphasize, if the air quality index is good, but you are cleaning up ash, please wear an N95 mask. Just cleaning it up, even if you're doing it correctly and you're using a wet cloth and you're being gentle, some can still get aerosolized. And so you want to wear an N95 mask when you're doing cleanup, in addition to long sleeves, long pants, potentially eye protection. But as far as just generally wearing it out in the air, check the air quality index, because as it improves, you'll be able to take your mask off.
Okay, we're going to do a station ID since it's the top of the hour. You're watching News Channel 3 and KCOI 12. And this is the community town hall meeting at San Marcos High School about the Thomas Fire.
That runs this, and they can't seem to do anything for us. We were able to get information before, and suddenly now we can't. We get some on TV and a little bit on a radio. I'm wondering, is there some other way that we can get this taken care of? We don't know how to fix these things, and when we ask the companies for how to fix them, they say, oh, we don't know. Wait a while, that kind of answer. Do you have some answers for us? I know it's real different compared to our other things. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a dicey one here. None of us here can speak to that. That's just outside of our expertise. I do know that we experience problems throughout our camp. There's an awful lot of people doing an awful lot of things. There's infrastructure that has been damaged, and I know, this is what I do know, is that crews from the cable companies, also crews from the power companies, from all those infrastructure companies and entities, they are working to restore all those services. If you are looking for information, we have information. We call them, they're sandwich boards, but we have 30 locations throughout Santa Barbara County and Ventura County. Those we will post those locations for you on the internet that you can't access. But we'll actually have I'll tell you what, we'll have a big poster tomorrow at this meeting that'll have all the locations where those people, we have those staffed, and we'll give you direction to those locations. You can go talk to a person. Okay.
I have those locations. I'll see you afterwards and I'll give them to you.
Well, we couldn't hear the question. Josh, you want to go grab the follow-up to that?
She can't get to ask her if she has a smartphone.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just that I keep hearing, just go to the website for this and this. We can't get to the website. That's the biggest frustration.
Do you have a smartphone, ma'am? You do, and it's not connecting to the internet? Okay. I'll tell you what, right next to you is a smartphone master. He's going to try to get your phone up to our website that has all this information. Okay. We're going to move over to this section here. All right. Please hold your hands real high if you have a question. We're going to give you a number. All right. 1. Sir in the striped shirt, you'll be 2. Ma'am there, you'll be 3. And somebody's had their hand for a very long time. Sean, who is 4?
Yeah.
Yes, you guys are so good.
Yeah, Kobe, we're going to take to this lady right now. Thank you.
Okay. So my question was, if we become mandatorily evacuated, do you want the front door open? Do you want the curtains pulled off the windows? What do you want us to do to prepare our home to make it easier for you?
Yes, we want you to leave the curtains closed because that provides some insulation to the interior of your house. If we know that the area is evacuated, it's nice oftentimes to have the doors unlocked, but it's no guarantee that it's going to matter.
Okay.
Anything else? No, so I mean, if we have to get into your house, we can get into your house, so don't leave it unlocked, okay? Let's put it that way.
Well, we don't want you breaking the windows. Do you want us to water the plants around the house or anything?
Yes, don't waste water, but keep your plants watered. It's the time of year with this dry weather, all of that moisture in those plants is drying out extremely rapidly at 1% RH. It's just the air is so dry it sucks up all the moisture.
Okay.
So definitely water.
Okay, thanks.
There's a fantastic resource available on the internet.
So we're going to break away from the press conference. I think they're about to wrap up as well. If you want to, you can go to KEYT.com. We are still live streaming this community meeting. So if you want to continue to watch it, if they do go on a little bit longer, you can go to KEYT.com.